Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to build a real-time data streaming pipeline on AWS using Apache Kafka. Okay, so our project is going to be we will have a source which is basically a SQL server running on Amazon RDS, and we are going to ingest any changes in this source system in real time using Apache Kafka and load it into Amazon S3, which is going to be our destination. Okay, so this video will help you understand how to build real-time or near real-time data streaming pipelines on AWS using Apache Kafka, and you will also learn how to use AWS MSK service, which is basically a fully managed service for running Apache Kafka on AWS. Okay, and this can also be very good project idea for someone looking to learn Apache Kafka and building data pipelines on AWS. So, firstly, let's discuss the pipeline or the architecture of our data streaming pipeline. So, our source is SQL Server, which is hosted on Amazon RDS. And so, we will be, let's assume that we will be getting some changes onto this SQL Server. So, these changes will be streamed to Apache Kafka. Okay, so we will run Apache Kafka on AWS MSK or managed streaming for Kafka, which is an AWS service for running Apache Kafka on AWS. So it's a fully managed service and it's very easy to use, and you can run Apache Kafka in matter of minutes without doing any extra configurations. Okay, so these changes will be ingested into Apache Kafka using Kafka Connect or MSK Connect, which is basically a managed service for Kafka Connect. So we will run Debezium SQL Server connector, which will connect to the source and pick the changes and stream it into Apache Kafka topic. And then we will create a S3 sync connector, which will again run on MSK Connect and pick the changes from this Kafka topic and put it into the destination S3 bucket. Okay, so this is going to be our architecture. So first, before I actually move on to the demo part, I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to explain what is Kafka Connect and what are this source connectors and sync connectors, because some of you might not have an idea about that. So let's discuss quickly and then move on to the demo part. So most of you are familiar with Apache Kafka. So in Apache Kafka, you will have what is called as Kafka topics, and you can write the data to those Kafka topics and consume the data from those Kafka topics. Okay, the applications which produce the data to Kafka topic are called as producers, and the applications which consume the data from the topics are called as consumers. Now, producers can be like your application, your own like custom applications or business logic, whatever, which write the data into the topic, and similarly consumers also, right? Now, if you want to integrate Kafka with like a popular data sources like Oracle, MongoDB, MySQL, whatever, right? So you do not want to be writing like those applications like by yourself. Basically, to write the logic to get the changes from Oracle database and then write it to Kafka topic and all that, right? So we have a Kafka Connect, which is basically a service that you can run in Kafka. Inside Kafka Connect, you can create this connectors. Okay, so connect. You can think of connectors like predefined plugins which have all the logic built in to connect your source systems to Apache Kafka. Okay, so you have plugins for Oracle source connector, you have plugins for MongoDB source connector, and etc. etc. Right? So if you want to like basically integrate Oracle with Kafka, what you do is inside Kafka Connect, you can install your Oracle plugin and then create a Oracle source connector from that plugin and then stream the changes from Oracle into your Apache Kafka topic, right? So it's basically that's the idea of Kafka Connect. Similarly, on the sync side as well, if you want to take the data from the topics and put it into this like popular sources like Snowflake or S3 or whatever, right? So you will have those like existing plugins which you can install and then create a connector out of it and then stream the changes from your topic into your target. Okay, so that is the idea of Kafka Connect. And inside Kafka Connect, you can create two types of connectors, which is basically source connector, which are producers, and sync connectors, which are consumers. Okay, so I hope I was able to give you a brief idea of what Kafka Connect is. Now let's move back to our pipeline architecture. So this is going to be our source, which is SQL Server, and then we are going to create a source connector, Debezium Server connector. Debezium is basically it provides plugins to connect with various sources. So we are going to install the BZM SQL Server connector and then create a source connector from that plugin, and then stream the changes into the Kafka topic. And we are going to pick those changes from Kafka topic using S3 sync connector, and then we are going to put the data into Amazon S3, which is our target. Okay, so I hope you are clear on the architecture as well. So let's get started. So these are the steps that we are going to execute. We will set up a source and destination. Basically, source is our database running on Amazon RDS, and destination is just an S3 bucket. And then we are going to create an MSK cluster and Kafka topic. And then after the cluster and topic are created, we will set up a source and sync connectors in MSK Connect, and then we will stream the data from source to S3 and then verify the data in the destination. Okay, so these are going to be the steps that we are going to follow. So let's start with creating our source and destination. So first step is set up source and destination. In the source, we will create an SQL Server database on Amazon RDS, and then we'll create some sample table, and then we will enable CDC onto the table. So CDC is basically change data capture. So when you enable CDC on a particular table, all the changes that you make on the table are going to be captured in a separate like change tracking table, which we can ingest into the Kafka. Okay, so basically the connector will connect to those change tracking tables and track all those changes which are happening on the sample, like our base table. Okay, and then we are going to insert some sample data into the table. Okay, and the destination is simple. We are just going to create an S3 bucket. Okay, the first step, let's create a database in Amazon RDS. So if you want to follow along these steps, I have documented everything in this GitHub repository in the README file. I'm going to share this GitHub repository in the description of this video, so you can follow the steps listed here. I'm also giving all the configurations and the code that I'm using in this project in this repository. Okay, so first let's create an database. So before we create a database, let's create a security group that we are going to attach to this database. Okay, so let's go to security groups and create a security group for this. So I'm going to allow the TCP traffic. So let's call this as RDS SG source, whatever. Okay, let's call this source RDS SG. Okay, so this is the basically security group for our database. So I'm going to add an inbound role, and I'm going to allow TCP traffic on port 1433, that because that's where we are going to connect to this database, and I'm going to allow it from anywhere. So you can choose to allow it only from certain sources that you want, but I'm just going to allow it everywhere. So if you choose to restrict the permissions, you need to allow it from the uh, your local, basically, because you're going to connect to this database from your local to make some changes, and also from MSK cluster, because that's where the Kafka connector will connect from. So just for simplicity sake, I'm going to allow it from everywhere, but feel free to fine tune these permissions. Okay, and I'm going to click on security group. Okay, so let's allow traffic into RDS DB. Okay, whatever. Click on create security group. Now once a security group is created, let's go to RDS and create a database. So you need to create a SQL Server database with the standard edition chosen. Okay, let's go to database, click on create databases, and select standard create, and let's select Microsoft SQL Server. So I'm creating a SQL Server database because it's easy to enable CDC on this database. So it's easy for demo purposes. So I'm going to select SQL Server standard edition because the certain versions of the SQL Server does not have the CDC feature, which is basically the change data capture feature. Okay, I'm going to select the standard edition, and I'm going to select this dev test, and I'm going to call this as Kafka source database. Okay, and master username, I'm going to leave it as admin. Credentials, I'm going to make it self-managed, and I'm going to give a password to this master user. Okay, let me give some password. Okay, I'm just going to select the standard classes and the storage. I'm just going to keep it 20 GB to the minimum, because we do not need that much. Okay, so all this I'm going to leave it as simple. connect to computer resource. So I'm just going to leave this as default, and I'm going to allow pub public access into this database just because I want to be able to connect it from outside. So I'm going to select the security group here that we created. Okay, I think this is the one. Yep, I'm going to attach the security group to this database, and then it's going to scroll over. So actually, this is going to cost you some money. So make sure that you delete this database once you are done with this demo. Otherwise, you're going to be shelling out some money on this database. So yep, I'm going to create this database, and while it is creating, I'm going to move over to S3 and then create our bucket there. Okay, let me create a bucket and call it as Kafka destination bucket. Okay, I'm just going to keep all this as default and create this bucket. Okay, so there is another thing that we need to do once we create this bucket. Basically, we need to create a VPC endpoint for this for S3. This is because our Kafka Connect cluster is going to run on VPC, and so to be able to connect to this S3 bucket from a VPC without going over the like public internet, we can create a VPC endpoint. So yeah, I have listed out the step here as well. Create a S3 bucket and then set up a VPC endpoint. So yeah, it should be quick. We can just create an endpoint here. Let me look for endpoints. Where is it? Yep, here it is. So I have already created it. So I have it. So if you don't have this endpoint created, you can just go and name it something, and you can select this AWS services, and here you can search for your S3. So if your bucket is in US East one, like my bucket is, you can search for this one. Just make sure you change it for the region that your bucket is in. Okay, search and then select this. So select a gateway, select this one, don't need express. Okay, so this is the one. So select this gateway and select your default VPC, and you can select a route table which has basically a public IGW internet gateway, and you can allow full access. You don't need to keep custom access, and click on create endpoint. So that's how you can create your VPC endpoint for S3. Okay, so during the course of this doing this entire demo by yourself, if you are stuck somewhere on any of the steps or seeing some errors, do let me know in the comments. I can help you out in the comments as well. Okay, so make sure you create this S3 endpoint for VPC endpoint for S3. Okay, so now both our source and destination are set. So let's wait for this database to get created, and once this database is created, we are going to log into the database, and like create the tables and enable CDC on the table and all that stuff. Okay, so let me wait for this database to come up. So we have our database created and available. So let's log into this database and execute the steps that I have given here to basically create some sample table and enable the CDC on the table. Okay, so let's take this endpoint, and I'm going to use DB Weaver. So you can use any DB client tool of your choice. So to connect to this SQL server, so it's going to show Microsoft SQL Server. Next, and I'm going to use this URL SQL Server. I'm going to use the credentials that I gave when I created the database, and click on finish. Okay, so let's see if we can connect to this database. So since we have allow traffic from all the sources into this database, we should be able to connect. So yeah, we are able to connect into this database. So let's create a table. And okay, so the first thing is I'm going to create a database here. So let me create a database called my app and run this script. Okay, so the database should be created. Let me just refresh this. Okay, so we have the database here. So I'm going to add that command over here as well. I think I missed that. So once we have created the database, we are going to create a table users inside that. So I'm just going to select. So it's going to create the table inside dbo. So this is the users table that I'm going to create. It's a very simple table which has user ID, first name, email ID, date of birth, and etc. Okay, so I'm just going to create this table. Okay, so I think now the table should be created. Okay, so we have this users table created. So once we have the users table created, what we are going to do is we are going to enable the CDC on the table. So like I already mentioned, when we enable the CDC on the table, all the changes to that table will be tracked in a separate change tracking table, and it will be easy for us to ingest those changes into Kafka. Okay, so I'm going to execute this command, which is basically to enable the CDC on. But first, we'll enable it on a database, which is our my app. So I'm going to enable it on the database level, and after that, I'm going to enable it at the table level. Okay, so I'm just going to execute this command. Okay, so I think this doesn't require anything, so let's hit enter. Okay, so this should enable CDC on our table. Okay, so next thing, so to verify if the CDC is enabled or not, I'll show you that as well. So you can run this and check what are the tables on which the CDC is enabled. So let me run this. Okay, I think there is some difference in the table name, so that should be fine. Let's go ahead and insert the sample data into our table, and then we'll verify the CDC. Okay, so I'm going to insert this records into this table. Then okay, so I have inserted some records. So to verify if the CDC is enabled or not, I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to refresh this database, my app, and if you see here, now we can see the schema called CDC, and inside CDC, if you see, there is this underscore CT table which is created for DBO underscore users. Okay, so this is the change tracking table which will have all the data, all the changes that are done on the table. So if you want to take a look at that, so let me CDC dot DBO users CT. Okay, so if you see this one, can see all the changes. So we have inserted some values, right? So if you see, you can see all those operation 2, basically this is the operation ID for insert. So you can see those, and these are the records that are inserted. So similarly, if someone does any delete or update, you can see that as well over here. Okay, so this is the purpose of enabling CDC, and this is how the change tracking table looks like. Okay, so I think now we are good from a source perspective. So let's go back and see the next steps. Okay, so we have created the database, and we have created the database table, enabled CDC on it, and inserted the data into that table. Okay, we have also created the S3 bucket and set up a VPC endpoint for that S3. So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to create the MSK cluster and create topics on that MSK cluster. The pipeline, we have created a source and we have created a destination. And the next thing is we are going to create this Kafka topic in MSK. First, we'll create a MSK cluster, and then inside that, we'll create a Kafka topic. And then we will create a source connector and then a sync connector. Okay, so in Amazon AWS console, I'm going to search for MSK and open MSK. So here in MSK, I'm going to click on clusters and click on create cluster, and let me use quick create option. So basically we are going to create a cluster type provisioned, and here as well we are going to allow the inbound and outbound traffic from anywhere, because this MSK cluster needs to create connect to the Kafka Connect RDS, and also it also has to connect to the S3 and everything, right? So we are going to select provision and allow inbound and outbound traffic from everywhere, and we are going to keep the authentication type as IAM. Okay, so let's call this as uh, Kafka pipeline cluster. You can call it whatever you want. Let's call this, let's select provisioned, and this is the Kafka version. I'm going to select 3.6.2 standard broker size you can reduce, so let's keep it small, and storage as well, let's just keep it 2 GB. That should be fine for us, and let's create this cluster. So before I create this cluster, yeah, you can create the cluster and then maybe modify the security group. Both of it should be fine. So here, if you go properties and security groups, I think default security group must be attached to that. So you can, yeah. So here I have just allowed the traffic from everywhere onto the security group. Okay. So you can choose to restrict again. So just for the sake of simplicity, I'm just allowing it from everywhere. Okay. So this is how you can create the cluster. And I think the authentication is set to IAM. So I can just make sure that as well. Network settings, brokers, storage, security settings. Yeah, I think IAM role based authentication is enabled. Okay, so make sure that you enable this, because you are going to set up the authentication through IAM into this cluster. Okay, I'll show you that part as well later. So I think it will take some time to create this cluster. So let's wait for this cluster to get created. Okay, so now our cluster is up and running. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to create source connector and sync connector. So before we do that, let's create a IAM role that our connectors will use. So basically, the connectors will need to have permission to connect to this IAM cluster, and also connect to RDS and S3 and things like that. Okay, so let's create an IAM role for that. Okay, so the permissions for IAM role I have listed under this IAM and MSK connector role. So basically this is what is the IAM role. So let me click on create role. I'll click on custom trust policy, and so the trust policy for this role will be this one, the trust relationship. So copy this one and paste it over here. Okay, so this is the trust policy. So in the account ID, make sure you replace your account ID. Okay, and click on next, and role name, let me just give it as MSK Connect role, and I'll just create the role, maybe then add the permissions. So let me search for MSK Connect role and permissions. So let me just create permission. So let me just select JSON here, and I can paste these permissions over there. Okay, I'll show you what are the permissions that I'm giving as well. Okay, so I'm just allowing this role to connect to this connect cluster, Kafka cluster and describe cluster, and read the data from the topic and describe the topic, write data to the topic and all those things. And also I'm giving full access to S3, basically because we will use this role to write the data to S3. So you can fine tune the permissions, like you can just give the right permissions to S3 and restrict the resources as well. So I'm just giving high level permissions. So click on next. That says basically MSK. Let's call this MSK policy, whatever. Create policy, and you have attached the MSK policy to this one. Okay, and the trust relationship should look something like this. Okay, so we have created this IAM role now. So next thing is let's create the source connector and sync connector. So before we create the source connector and sync connector, we need to download the plugins for those connectors. So plugins are basically the code which have all the logic to pull the data from those sources or write the data to those destinations. So this is the link to download the Debezium connector for SQL Server. So I'm just going to paste that link. Okay, so this is where you can find this Debezium SQL Server CDC source connector, and you can download that. Okay, and so after you download that, what we'll do is we'll just upload that into S3 over here. So I'll show you how to create the connectors. So basically, the first step is you download the plugin, and then you can go to MSK Connect and upload that plugin and create a connector from that plugin. Okay, so I'm just going to add files and download, and I'm going to upload the zip file over here. Okay, so basically this is the plugin for that CDC SQL Server source connector. The next we will also download the sync connector plugin as well. Okay, and this is the link for that. Hit enter. So this is Amazon S3 sync connector. Download the self-hosted one. Here as well you can download the self-hosted version. Download this, and then again go to this S3. Let's upload this as well. Add files and upload this S3 sync connector plugin as well. Okay, so we have downloaded the plugins for both source connector and sync connector. um, so if you go back to this one, so now we are ready to create a source connector and load the data to Kafka topic. So you can ask where is that Kafka topic. The Kafka topic will be created in this MSK cluster. So there are two options. You can create your Kafka topic beforehand and specify that Kafka topic in your source connector configuration, and say that say to your source connector, hey, this is where you need to load the data into. Or other thing you can do is you can let the connector create the topic by itself. Okay, if you'd like to create the topic beforehand, you can use this command that I have given here, command to create the topic. So this is the topic, so you can name the topic name here. The name of the topic will be like database server name dot your app database name. So it is going to be cdcdemo.myapp.dbo.users. Okay, so you need to create a topic with that name, basically cdcdemo.myapp.dbo.users. Okay, so you can create the topic beforehand using this command, or you can just let it be and the source connector will create the topic. If you have these configurations defined, right, so the default creation, topic creation and everything, so the connector will create the topic for you. Okay, so if you see my configuration connector config, so this is my source connector config. I am including this topic creation default parameters here. So what happens is it looks for the topic. So the default like pattern of the topic will be like your database dot schema dot your table name. So it will look for that topic. If the topic is not there, it will create the topic by itself and load the data into the topic. Okay, so we are going to let that Kafka like source connector create the topic by itself. Okay, so we are going to create a configuration for this one. So here you need to replace certain variables. So if you see, this is a source connector configuration. So this is the connector class, SQL Server connector and all those things. And this is the like authentication method and all those things. So where we need to replace this. So here if you see, we need to replace this with our RDS host name. So let's go to RDS and get this endpoint. Okay, so this is what we need to put in there. Okay, so this is the RDS host name, and the username is what you created during the database creation. So this is my password for that database user. So this is the credentials that the source connector will use to connect to this database and pull the data from in there. So this role should have all those permissions. And table include list. So basically this is the list of tables that you want to capture as part of CDC. Okay, as part of CDC. So this is going to be dbo dot users and schema include list. So this is the schema that you want to include in the CDC capture in this connector. Okay, so we just want to include DBO in it, so we'll leave that. And this is the database name actually, so I forgot to mention this. So replace this database name with your database name. So we have mentioned the database name, the schema to include, and the list of tables to include as well. Okay, so that is it. And the next thing is the Kafka cluster configuration, where this connector writes the data into, right, the target basically, which is Kafka topic. um, so we need to replace the bootstrap server URL, I think. Yep. It is here. So the bootstrap URL, you can find it here when you go to Kafka clusters, and you can click on view client information, and you can just take one of this. It's not necessary you copy all the endpoints. Mm, so I'm just going to replace this. Okay, I'm just going to search URL to make sure if I have to specify it anyway. Okay, so I think, yeah, that's it. So you can use this configuration to create. Okay, so this is the configuration for the source connector. Okay, you can name this whatever you want. So I hope you are clear on all these configurations. So now let's go back to MSK console. Okay, in the MSK console, you in the MSK Connect, you can go to connectors, and you can create a plugin. Okay, so first we'll create a plugin. So I had already created this, so let me just delete and show you what how to create this once from the sketch, so that you're clear on what exactly needs to be done. Okay, so the first thing is we'll create a customized plugin from the plugin code that we downloaded. So let's browse this one, and then we will use this plugin to create our source connector. Okay, so this is the Debizium connector, choose, and the plugin name is Debizium SQL Server source connector. Okay, so this is the plugin, and you can name it whatever you want and create customized plugin. Okay, and then when we are creating the connectors, we can use it. I'll do one thing. I'll just create a plugin for sync connector as well. Browse, and this is the plugin for, and then we'll call this as S3 sync connector. Okay, create customized plugin. So I hope you are clear what we are doing here. We are just defining the plugins, and we will use these plugins when we are creating the actual connector. So the plugin is the one which has the code inside it for all that pulling the data from the source and putting it into the topic, etc. So now we are going to create a connector. Click on create connector, and we are going to use the existing customized plugin, and this is going to be Debizium SQL Server plugin, and let's call this as demo source connector. Okay, then so the cluster type is MSK cluster, and we are going to choose the cluster here, and the connector configuration. Okay, so you can put that connector configurations that we defined over here. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure if everything is looking good. Okay, and let's keep it as auto scaled, and workers is all the others. Let's keep it at default, and worker configuration MSK default, and now access permissions. Okay, so this is where we will select the role that we created in the previous step. So let's select this MSK Connect role that we created in the previous step. Click on next. Okay, looks like there is some issue with this configuration. Let me see what it is. It's okay. I think we need to pass it in a JSON format here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it here and paste it in this, so that in the properties section, so that the syntax matches. Okay, and go ahead and create the connector. access control is IAM role based access control. Now what this connector will do is it will assume this MSK connect role that we defined in the previous step, and it will try to connect to this MSK cluster. And since this role has the permissions, it will be able to connect. Okay, and click on next, and the logs. We are going to create a log group for this purpose. So let's do one thing. Let's create a log group first, just to track the logs of these connectors. So let's call this MSK connector logs. Okay, and click on create, and we will send the logs of this connector to this log group. Let's send it to this one, and next, and just verify everything once. Okay, so we are creating a source connector with the plugin that we downloaded, and by passing these parameters to that code. Okay, so it will create a SQL Server connector with these parameters, like the source details, the target details, and everything. Okay, and click on create connector. So now this connector will get created. So once this connector gets created, it will start loading the data into the Kafka topic that it's going to create. Okay, so how do we verify that the data is getting loaded into the Kafka topic, right? So you can actually I have listed the step here. So if you see, we can create an EC2 instance, and from there we can read the data which is there inside the topic once it is created, right? Just to verify the data is coming in properly. So if you see, this is the step that I'm talking about. You can create an EC2 instance. You can set up Kafka inside it, and you can just see the data that is coming into the topic from the source connector. Okay, so it's going to be click. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to create an EC2 instance, and then weave the data that the source connector is loading into the topic. Okay, just going to call it something like test instance, whatever. Amazon Linux 2 inscription T2 micro should be fine. I'm just going to select this Kafka instance. I think I have this one, or let me just create a new key pair just to be on safer side. Test key, whatever. Okay, create key pair. Okay, so I'm just downloaded that key pair, and so I'm just allowing the SSH traffic from anywhere into this instance, and let me go ahead and launch this instance. Okay, so once you launch that instance, we'll just log in into that instance and install Kafka in it, and then see the data in that topic. Okay, so before that, let's go back and see what is the status of this connector. Okay, so it says it is still creating, and let's go to the logs and see what's coming over there. Okay, I'm just going to log groups and search for MSK connector logs. Okay, the log streams. Okay, so this is the demo source connector log. So if you see, it's saying that it is creating. It actually created the connector, and it created the topic as well. So if you see, this is the topic. So this is how it will create. Okay, so the database server name dot your database name dot schema dot table name. So this is the structure in which the topic name gets created. So you can also create the topic with this name before source connector, and the source connector will load it into the topic. Okay, so we need to check this topic if the data is coming into this topic properly or not. Okay, so let's go back to this EC2 instance that we created, and log in into this instance and see. Okay, so let me open a terminal, and I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to change my directory to downloads, where I have this PEM file downloaded. Paste it, change the permissions of this PEM file, and then connect into the my bad. So this is a command. now I'm connected to this EC2 instance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install Kafka in this. So I have listed all the commands over here. Okay, so you can just go to this Kafka and Kafka commands. So I'm going to first install Java. And then we are going to download the Kafka distribution and then install it. Okay, paste it. Okay, and then we are going to extract this. So you can just use all the commands that I given in the repo. So this EC2 instance has no basically role in our pipeline. So this we are just creating to basically access the data in the topic and see if the data is properly getting loaded into the topic or not. Okay. So next thing is I'm going to download this IAM jar file, which enables whenever we are connecting from this EC2 instance to the MSK cluster, right? So it will need this jar file to authenticate using IAM. Okay. I'm going to paste it. Okay, so I have downloaded it. So now I'm just going to go into bin. Okay, so just okay. In the bin, I'm going to create this client.properties file and paste this configurations over there. So we are just defining the security protocol and authentication method in this Kafka. I'm going to save this. Okay, so next we are going to create a consumer on that. So before that, I need to attach an IAM role to this EC2 instance, which has access to the MSK cluster, right? So let's create an IAM role for that. Let me go into IAM console. Let me go to roles, create role, AWS-API. I'm going to select EC2 and select next, and I'm going to attach policy. I'll just create this for now. Role name is EC2 Kafka instance role. Okay, you can name it whatever you want. Trusted entities. Okay, create role. EC2 I'm just going to name it something like EC2 test role, whatever. Okay, so and to that instance role I'm going to attach the permissions that I have given here. Okay, that's the EC2 role. So you can just copy this and the permissions, add permissions, creating line policy, JSON, and okay, so I'm just giving like some permissions for this EC2 instance to be able to connect to the cluster, create topic, create the data from topics and things like that. Okay, click on next. EC2 test Kafka role. Okay, just create policy. Okay, so we gave this Kafka permissions to this EC2 role. Now I'm going to go into this EC2 instance, and in the instance settings, I think under instance settings or something, I'm not sure, maybe, yep, under security, I'm going to mod. So I'm going to select this EC2 test role that we created and click on update IAM role. Okay, so now we have attached that EC2 test role to this instance, which has permissions to connect to MSK cluster. So now let's go back here and Kafka commands. So I'm going to create a consumer on this topic that we got the source connector created. So I'm going to paste this here. I'm going to take the bootstrap URL and the topic name as well. So we can get it from this logs. So this is the topic name. So basically I'm just creating some console consumer to leave the data in this topic. Okay, so I'm going to run this command in my EC2 here. Let me just go back to my installation. and paste this. Okay, let's see what is the data that is there in this topic that the source connector created. So I'm just giving this from beginning so that all the messages from the beginning are there. Okay. So if you see, these are all the messages that are loaded from the connector onto this topic. Okay. So we are able to verify that the data is coming into this topic from the source connector. So let's create a sync connector to take this data into S3. So to create a sync connector, we will go to MSK again and click on connectors, create connector, use existing customized plugin, and this time we are going to use S3 sync connector plugin. Click on next and let's name it as demo sync connector, and the MSK cluster again is going to be this Kafka pipeline cluster, and the properties again I have listed it here, so you can take this and modify a little bit. So here you can give your topic name, so the topic name that we just used here. Okay, so I'm just copy from here itself. Yeah, so this is the topic name. So where the connector needs to read the data from, that is this. So the connector class is basically S3 sync connector. So this is how you need to specify. The plugin expects it in this format, and your bucket name. Okay, so let's give the S3 bucket name. Okay, so this is the bucket name where we want to load the data, and I think that should be it. Okay, let's go back to MSK, and yeah, so we'll just verify this once. So we are specifying the topic and the bucket name. Since we are using creating it using console, and we are selecting the cluster name here, it will automatically know where this topic is present, like in which cluster. Okay, auto scaled and everything is fine. This should be fine. And again, we'll select the same MSK connect role and click on next, and click on next, and we'll deliver the logs to that MSK connector, same log group that we used, MSK connector logs. So next and create connector. So it will take some time to create this connector, so let's wait for it to create it. So if you see here now, our source connector is in running state and it's sending the data from the source to Kafka topic. Okay, so let's wait for the sync connector to get created. You can also monitor the log. So if you go back here, it should have created a log. It will create a log stream here for this connector as well in some time. So we can verify that here. I think this is the log stream for the sync connector. So you can just monitor your logs here and see if there are any errors or anything of that sort. So yeah, I think it's going to work fine. So let's wait for this to get created. Okay, so if you see the logs, it started saying that it created a S3 output stream and its files are committed to S3 and all those things. Okay, so let's go to this target bucket and see if the data is coming in. So I'll just refresh this. Okay, so there is a topics directory over here. This is the topic name, and if you see, this is the partition, and also so this is the data that's coming in. So let me just try and see one file. Okay, let's see what's there in that file. Okay, so if you see, this is how the data is coming in um, to that sync, I mean the target, which is RS3. So since it is an insert operation, before was null, and after we are getting, and so yep, this is the details of like some metadata information. So let me just to demonstrate the real-time aspect of it, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to delete a record from this, basically make some changes inside this database and see if those changes flow into the like S3. Okay, so I'm going to delete some users. Let's see, John. Okay, Let me go here, delete from users where first name is equal to John. Okay, so I have deleted one record. So let's see if that changes flow in here. Okay, I think we might have got that record. So let's go to this S3 and refresh. Okay, I think I got this file just now. So let me just download this. Okay, so here if you see, yeah, this before was there here, and after should be null. So this is the record that I just created, the first name John. So this is the delete record. So before we will have, and after will be null. So operation is equal to delete. Okay, so as soon as I made the change, the changes flew into our S3 through Kafka. Okay, so this is how you can verify that the pipeline is working fine, and all your changes are getting loaded into the target properly. Yep, that is how you can build a real-time data streaming pipeline in AWS using Apache Kafka. So just to do a quick recap of what we have done in this video, we created this source database on Amazon RDS. We created this Amazon destination S3 bucket, and then we loaded the data from this source into this target using Apache Kafka. So inside Kafka, in Kafka Connect, we created a source connector which connected to the source database and loaded the data into the Kafka topic. And then we created a S3 sync connector which basically consumed the data from this Kafka topic and loaded the data into Amazon S3. Okay, so your destination can change. It can be Redshift or whatever. So in that case, you can use a different sync connector, and similarly your source can change as well, in which case you can create a different source connector. But the overall architecture should remain similar when you are creating a real-time data streaming pipeline in AWS using Apache Kafka. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like this video and do subscribe to my channel. And if you are stuck on any of the steps while executing this demo, please let me know in the comments and I'll try to help you out. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.